blue sky contains the rest. Ancient words stand thin and proud, like people shuffling through a crowd. And here I stand, so small and far, singing to a single star.
Welcome back to another episode of Seeking the Light of a Thousand Suns. Today we have a very special guest with us who's going to delve into the fascinating work of energy mapping based on the four worlds. Before we introduce our guest, a quick reminder to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform and leave us a review if you enjoy our content. Now let's get to our special guest today. She's a licensed psychologist, hypnotherapist, Chai Qigong teacher, Reiki master and teacher, author, astrologer, and energy mapper. She also has many professional coaching certificates that can help you find and align with your core self while exploring and developing spiritual awareness. Dr. Eleanor Haspel-Portner received her PhD from the University of Chicago as a social sciences researcher before receiving her clinical psychology license. Her psychology, biology, anthropology, sociology, clinical research, and extensive esoteric studies combined integrate a unique approach on human energy mapping and connecting with universal consciousness. Her professional client relationship facilitates in validating the dimensions of the self, aligning with inner truths, spiritual awakenings, and guiding you on how to live a happy, balanced life on all levels of being. She does not believe in a cookie-cutter approach, as every client has a different human experience and handles energy in a unique way. Noble Energy Map is an illustration of your unique energetic flow of esoteric and exoteric systems, a blueprint for how you operate and interact with the world. This blueprint includes a personality chart, fixed and open energy centers, life force channels and gates, planetary influences, birth timing, and critical life development stages. Dr. Eleanor studied human design research with the founder Ra Uru-Hu in 1996. At that time, Ra asked Dr. Eleanor to validate the system scientifically. Based on a research analysis of over 30,000 cases, Dr. Eleanor documented that the human design system is a faulty system. Dr. Eleanor found that there are 5 energy types, and that while the original human design body energy map is structurally correct, the content taught in human design is not accurate. Dr. Eleanor also recognized the 4 worlds as a verifiable aspect of mapping energy using astrological calculations. Understanding development in a baby, it was possible to extend the energy mapping to include all worlds that imprint our energy bodies by the time we are 3 months old. These worlds are the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical ways of being, along with a 6-month conditioning field for individuals and events. This is how her work in Noble Energy Sciences was born. Noble Sciences includes practices from the Tree of Life, the I Ching, the Hindu chakra system, developmental psychology, clinical psychology, clinical and statistical research in the structure of human energy mapping, along with the multiple layers of dimensional existence. The unique integration the unique integrating of spirituality and esoteric methods assists with clearing issues of the personality from trauma, balancing the subtle energetic bodies by clearing blockages, and allows individuals to connect with their higher self, to be one with their core being. Welcome, Dr. Eleanor.
Thank you.
So, how did you get started on this journey?
From the time I remember when I was a baby, I was seeing auras. And I was registering the energy around me and didn't exactly like the way people treated each other. And I would ask a lot of questions about, why are you talking like that? Or why are you acting like that? Which at times went over fine and other times didn't. One of my sisters gave me The Little Prince to read when I was 11 years old. And that became my favorite book because it talked about the spiritual and about consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was 15, she gave me Jung's Memory, Dreams, Reflections to read. And that was eye-opening for me because I was always straddling the scientific and the creative and the spiritual. When I decided to go to graduate school, I chose the University of Chicago because it was interdisciplinary, and I could study biology, sociology, anthropology, and psychology, and get a broad scientific, social scientific research background. And while I was in graduate school, I worked both as a research assistant and also taught college for 3 years. And I discovered not only did some of my professors fudge data, which horrified me, but the academic world was so much about finding students who would do research in line with your research to publish. And at the time, I had 2 young children and a big background in developmental psych. And I was at a loss how to help them and talk to them and keep communicating with them on a spiritual level, protecting their soul, which was my mission. So I started studying communication skills, hypnosis, whatever I could as a professional study to become more competent as a parent. And I guess that's been my journey. Keep studying until the answers come together in some cohesive way. And I opened my own private practice in 1974 and proceeded to have a very powerful Kundalini experience with a direct experience of God and of light, knowing about life and death and rebirth and relationships and energy and knowledge. And at that point, I started studying consciousness. I studied the Tree of Life with the builders of the Adytum for 15 years, learning about the Kabbalah, Gematria, alchemy, Tarot, all the esoteric schools. And at that point, I already was seeing auras and remembering.
Right.
And I needed to learn how to control it. Because when I was out in public, I would know things about people that I didn't want to know. And so I had to learn to turn it off. And I studied for 5 years to learn how to turn my ability to see on and off, so I was not intruding on anybody's space. And then in 1996, I saw the human design mandala, and it I understood what it was, and it spoke to me because I was already trained as a Jungian analyst. I already was in private practice and had extensive experiences with energy. And I met my husband in 1978 when I was told by a voice to go to an ashram in India. And I followed the voice, and I met Marvin on the day and time that my mentor astrologer told me I'd meet someone.
Wow.
And we've been together since the day we met 45 years ago. So my life has been really a journey of seeking the answers that puzzled me even as a child. And I studied human design quite extensively and had Ra Uruhu come visit and stay in our home for weeks at a time. And in 1999, he asked my husband and myself to validate the human design system scientifically, because I'm a social science researcher. And using the statistical package for the social sciences, I analyzed 30,000 cases with 5 matched groups.
Wow.
And I found doing z-tests, chi-squares, z-tests, rotational factor analyses, and multivariate analysis of variance, that the structure of the body map held. But what Ross said in terms of the content did not. And so I had, and he really was not interested in the science. But as a scientist, you know, I could not walk away from it, and I couldn't fudge data. So I proceeded using my twin kittens to calculate all of the worlds. Because when we sleep, we go into a mammalian matrix where we no longer, when we're in deep sleep, we don't have a cortex, we're not thinking, we're breathing on our own, and we have no emotion. So I began to look at the different matrix. Ra was given the mammalian matrix because he asked a very simple question. He said, if this is a human design and my dog Barley is with me, what's his design? And the voice said to him, when we sleep, we move into a mammalian matrix, which does not have any of the thought centers or the ego center or the solar plexus. And Ra thought that that was what happened when we dreamed, but he was not at all knowledgeable in the field of science or psychology or sleep architecture, but I am. So I was able to make sense of how people change between the worlds. And then based on one of my kittens who died at age 10 of cardiomyopathy, and the other one who lived to age 18, his twin, perfectly fine, I was able to calculate their physical design to find the defect in the difference in their chart that accounted for that. And then I was able to extrapolate that to the human because I had the sleep design and I had the dream design of a human. And so my research took me to the question, how do we function in the 4 worlds? We know from the Kabbalistic tree of life that there are 4 worlds: mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical. And our playing cards show the 4 worlds. The 4 suits are correlated to the Kabbalistic tree of life and have their origins in it.
Wow.
And then when I was doing Tai Chi Gong and training to be a teacher, one of the key standing exercises is moving in a figure eight. And as you move in the figure eight, you move from the emotional world to the mental world, to the physical world, to the spiritual world, to the emotional, mental, spiritual, physical. And you're balancing the hemispheres of the brain. You're balancing the left and right side of the body. And when you move into the body twist, you're balancing the satsuma, the central channel, through the upper chakras and the lower chakras. So putting all the information together, about a year ago, the Holy Spirit whispered to me while I was doing my Tai Chi Gong, now is the time to release this information to the world. You know what the worlds are. You know how they integrate. Now tell people they've been misinformed. And so that's what I'm doing.
I love that about you. You know, there's so many things that you brought tied together, which we all know that like there's many, many, many synchronicities and many things that tie together. But I mean, I'm always learning something new all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely love your story about even at a young age, that you were already having experiences with things and you were already trying to balance the spiritual and the physical world and trying to, and how as you had grown and your interests and your studies and all these have grown, this has all changed along with you. It just, I think is such an amazing story.
I remember as a child asking my mother, especially, why are you doing it this way when it would be better for me to do it this way? And she couldn't really answer. But I was very blessed to have parents who, when I wanted to do something, would say to me, we trust your judgment. Do it your own way.
So you got
Which
to
gave
experiment.
me the freedom to pursue things.
Yes, and a lot of whether you know they're highly spiritual or not, a lot of children don't get the opportunity to learn things that way and to experiment.
One of the things I've been teaching, and I actually taught a webinar a couple of weekends ago, over 2 weekends, on the 4 worlds. And what I've come to understand, not only do my maps show the worlds, but when I trace back through the communication skills I've studied, I studied parent effectiveness training to learn how to communicate with my kids. Then I studied hypnosis to learn how to communicate to the unconscious and do past life regressions. Then I studied imagotherapy to work with couples, and clean language to work with now I understand, to work with the spiritual world. And change your questions, change your life kind of questioning, which is open-ended questions to deal with the mental world. So now I understand that each world has its own language. And as I begin to teach people the language for the worlds and to identify which world they're living in or operating in, then their life changes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. That sounds amazing.
Let me give you an example. One of the things that I was able to explain in the 4 worlds class is that emotional reactivity is only in the mental world. If you want to transform an emotional reaction, you need to go through a portal to the spiritual world, because emotions are always related. Emotional reactivity is related to a relationship. And relationships that trigger us are third dimensional emotions.
Wow.
Something that happened in our life that didn't honor our soul.
Right.
And so the transformation for emotional energy is always going to spirit. And as my clients began in the Four Worlds class to recognize that and to implement it in their life, they've said it's completely changed the way they operate.
Wow. Would I be wrong in saying, because to me, in my mind, that sounds similar to soul defragging. Is that what it's called? No, soul retrieval. I'm sorry.
Soul retrieval is a little bit different because it's not really integrative. If you go into the spiritual world, and let's say you remember past lives, or you remember people from that life, or you feel like you've been with someone in a past life, it's not transforming between this world and that world. So what values shift? What communication patterns shift? And if you do a soul retrieval, then that soul needs to integrate with the personality or the soul of the person who's had the retrieval.
Ah, okay.
And you can't understand that soul in third dimensional emotional language. So I would, if it were my client on whom I did a soul retrieval, and I actually had a colleague ask me this question yesterday. She said she was doing a past life regression on someone today and said, would I do it in a true hypnosis or a conversational hypnosis? And which communication skill would I use to go deep? And I said, I would do it in conversational hypnosis, and I would use clean language because that's the language of the soul. And a clean question would be, and knowing who you were in a past life and accessing that soul, what do you know now? So that person who's had that soul retrieval would be asking their soul what they knew now differently. Because if you're retrieving on a soul level, you want to operate on the soul level. Consciousness is state specific, which is why we don't remember our dreams.
Mm.
And what my maps show are that when we dream, not sleep, when we dream, we're in a matrix that interfaces between the worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the energy, cosmic energy from the spiritual realm gets carried over by pathways in the cortex to the mental world, to the cerebral cortex and the frontal lobe, where we can interpret or reinterpret that unconscious material from the spirit world. It's why when we wake up, as long as we stay in the energy of that spiritual world, we get fragments. But as soon as we pop out of bed into our waking world, it begins to go poof.
Wow.
And I can show that in my charts.
That's amazing. So, how is the human design and your energy mapping and other personality assessment tools, how would you say the technique that you use and the service that you do differs?
Well, any personality assessment is only looking at the mental world, conscious and unconscious. It's coming through the cerebral cortex. You can't access the soul through the mental world. You have to access it through the frequency of the soul.
Gotcha.
And in that, I mean, so many of the people I work with say they grew up feeling alone, that nobody spoke to the core of who they were, or recognized or acknowledged when they felt that something was right. They'd sometimes get pushback. And what I'm teaching people is that they live in multiple dimensions, and they need to stand firm with what they know and have the courage to stand up for it. Because when you know what you know, because you know it, and nobody can tell you you don't know it, you have to honor it. And we've all had experiences, I think, where we knew what we knew, and somebody told us we were wrong, and we were really hurt. And it's a big wound. And so many people live with that day after day after day, needlessly. So what I do with my maps, what I do with teaching the world, and now communication skills in the world, is empowering people to their multidimensional nature and giving them permission and license to bring it into the third dimensional world and to stand up for it and to acknowledge it.
That is so, like, I'm picturing, as you're talking about this, like, I'm picturing, like, you know, I see all these meditation photos and these things all the time where you see like the energy of everything moving in toward you. And I know that's not probably exactly what the picture's depicting, but that's, you know, like what goes to my mind is, you know, with all of this energy that surrounds us and all of these worlds and all of these energy frequencies, and I mean, and everything, it sounds like you give people the tools, you give people the support and empower them to integrate all of that.
Right. And
Yes.
the maps show me the timing, because when we are growing from 3 months prenatally to birth, at birth, we have 4 worlds integrated into our being. We're born with those 4 worlds already active. But then as we go through the next 3 months, they layer in by the rest of the cosmos, filling in all of the energy. So by the time we're 3 months old, we have experienced every single astrological energy in every single sign, because the moon goes around the wheel every month. We get to experience every energy every month. We get to experience the fast-moving planets over the course of, well, the sun moves around the whole wheel in a year. So it's foolish to think that one moment in time makes us who we are and can tell us our whole destiny. But when we look at that 6-month period,
Right.
where the cosmic energy has been like a musical piece, turning us on and off in different places, then we begin to know what our timing is. Oh, we became spiritually active at this point in time. Maybe I need to wait a week before I take action so my spirit has time to process. Or maybe I know instantly what's, and in my own case, in the human design system, I was told that I was a manifester and could just take action. And I kept saying, "What? Wait, I don't do that. I don't do that. I wait and I wait and I wait." And then all of a sudden, I know. And when I know because I know, that's when I act. And sure enough, when I had all the charts in front of me, I looked at my chart and it went, holy smokes, this tells me the whole picture. And then I looked at my children and my clinical clients, and I went, this explains things that no other system explained. So because I had the statistical background, the psychological background, the esoteric background, I could take the pieces, and when I saw what I had, I went, okay, here it is. This is real. It explained something nobody else could explain to me in all my years of study.
That is just so awesome.
And it's the four worlds, Maya. It's we've been now I realize that the field of psychology gave us a lot of misinformation, not intentionally, but because nobody thought about the multidimensional realms. And so if we look at someone like Freud, he was looking at the conscious and the unconscious, and he said ego, superego, and id. So he was trying to break it down, but only into 3D, the world we're aware of.
Right.
And then anything we weren't aware of became sort of the enemy unconscious. You want to make everything conscious so you're not taken by surprise. Jung said he had two sides. One was the artist and the spiritual being, and the other was, the scientist. And so he said conscious and collective unconscious, meaning the collective unconscious connected us to the whole universe. But he never talked in terms of the physical world or separating the emotional and the mental world. And so when I look at how to deal with people now, I shift my speech to the world that they're in. I shift my questions to what dimension they're asking for the answer. And I think that the spiritual world is the integrative world of consciousness.
Wow.
It's because the dream state is taking the information from the superconscious four-dimensional realm and bringing it down through our cells and giving us little tidbits in the mental world. But if we apply ourselves and meditate and go into frequencies that are spiritual frequencies, a whole other world opens up to us.
Right. You are just such an interesting and amazing person.
Well, thank you.
One of the things that you had talked about in when we spoke last was there's a critical life stages in the esoteric body during development and how that plays into your mapping. And you kind of touched on that a little bit earlier. about the
Okay. Yeah, I can give you the time frame. So 3 months before birth, when a woman goes into the third trimester, is when the baby's cerebral cortex actually becomes impressionable. So if a pregnant woman plays music during the third trimester, the baby will respond to it once it's born. It remembers it.
Wow.
So we know, so 3 months before birth, the mental world begins to function. A week before birth, the spirit enters the fetus and the baby usually drops into birth position in the pelvis. 2 days before birth, the woman is experiencing hormonal changes that are bringing about delivery. Braxton Hicks contractions and other contractions, and the baby is fully dropped and in position. An hour and a half before birth, and during that hour and a half, is the transition stage of labor, and then birth. We count from birth, an hour and a half after birth, so it's a mirror image. As above, so below. Past, present, future. So an hour and a half after birth, the baby is breathing on its own and it's cleaned up. A week, 2 days after birth, attachment happens. The milk comes down. That's when the baby is really attached to the mother and the mother attaches to the baby. And it's hormonal. I remember when my son was born and I had gained so little weight and had a completely natural delivery. And I'm looking at him and thinking, okay, this is my baby, but my body hasn't changed, and I'm, this is my baby. I'm supposed to feel something. And then I got up and put him back in the bassinet. And I looked in the mirror and my forehead crinkled and his forehead crinkled. And at that moment, I felt the hormones, like a surge of hormones. And I would have broken that nursery door down if that baby had cried. I felt it. So that's 2 days. And then a week after, in many societies, that's when they claim that the soul anchors itself in the baby. So they don't name the baby for a week. Or in Judaism, that's when the bris happens. In other religions, that's baptism, ideally. And that's when the soul is anchored, and it's the spiritual design, the spiritual map. And what I found with many, many people is that that's a key for their decision making. That something turns on when they were a week old that told them what was right for them and what wasn't right for them. And so when I see that in a map, I always tell that individual, don't make any major decisions for a week. Sleep on it, talk about it, but don't commit until you know, because you know. And then 3 months after birth is when the baby reaches and has volition. And in pediatric literature now, that first 3 months of life is considered the missing 4th trimester. Validation for me using that calculation.
Right.
So we have a 6-month period where the sun has gone halfway around the zodiac, and the earth, which is its opposition, has also gone the other half. So by the time we're 3 months old, we have the whole circle.
Is there something that can change in a person's life that would change their mapping? On the spiritual.
Nothing changes the mapping, but things trigger the mapping.
Okay.
So I haven't done additional research on certain critical times. I need to finish this phase before I go to that phase.
Sure.
But there was an astrological technique that fascinated me called the star wheel technique. And it was a technique used by Thurza Escobar. And she used a calculation that was breaking up each astrological sign to the full zodiac. So you can take a 30-degree sign and say within that 30 degrees, there's another whole zodiac. So you break that up by every 2.5 degrees. And then you take that additional zodiac and break it up again, and you get 144 different positions around the wheel. And when you get those positions, the timing of repeating dates in a person's life shows up. And I was always saying, how would you know that this would have happened to me at this time? Or why did I have so many people in my life who have the same birthday? And as an example, today, 2 people I worked with had the same birthday within 2 days. And both their birthdays are exactly on my astrological ascendant and Venus. Exact. So figuring out how those synchronicities occur, it's right in the charts if you know how to analyze them.
Wow.
And those kinds of questions to my astrology teachers, how would you have known I would have done with my chart what I did? And usually they'd say, well, we wouldn't have. That wasn't good enough for me.
Right.
When I look at somebody's maps, usually what they say to me is, I don't know how these maps show it, but you told me things nobody else has ever known about me. And it's right there in the map.
That's incredible.
It's an incredible system. And it's not my system. It came from the Holy Spirit. I just am the messenger.
Right. How would someone know if they were out of balance in any of the worlds, or that they should be looking for? I mean, you and I know, like, everybody should be looking for this, but for listeners, how would somebody know that this service would benefit them, or that they're out of balance and should be looking for?
If they, well, you know, the simplest, if somebody is emotionally reactive, that is only the mental world. It has nothing to do with your soul, has nothing to do with your spirit, has nothing to do with your physical health, unless you let it get to you by coming down to a third dimensional level and reacting emotionally in that reactivity, because that throws your chemistry off, it throws your spirituality off, and it throws you mentally off. So by understanding that anytime you have an emotional reaction, it needs to be transformed spiritually. And it generally can be spiritually transformed either by asking it the right questions or knowing who it is you're connecting with and remembering that their reactions to you are not personal. Everybody responds from inside themselves. And when somebody is mean to you or snippy or rude or triggers you, it's about them, it's not about you. So what each of us has to deal with is our emotional triggers, and make sure that when we feel that way, we remember to go back to spirit and transform through the spiritual angelic realm to our higher self. And from that place there, then the question is, what was so important that God would have put this in front of me to learn? Key question.
Yeah, I love that.
When in 2011 or 12, I was knocked over by a wave in the ocean when I was getting my granddaughter's pail and shovel. And I broke my clavicle really badly. And I went home and I lay down in terrible pain. And I said, okay, God, what was so important that you would knock me over by my beloved ocean? What do I need to learn? And the answer came back. I was president of the Hypnosis Society at the time. And the answer came back to me, you're shouldering too much responsibility. Delegate.
Wow.
And I said, okay, you've got it. And I started delegating.
Wow.
But that's a question. I mean, there I was in terrible pain. I was really emotionally hurt. You know, how could my ocean do that to me? And when I asked the question and I got the answer, it was like, okay, why didn't I get the message when it was given to me gently?
Right.
You know, I had to get knocked over. And at the time, I was studying my Builders of the Adytum lesson on Gabura, which is the shoulders and its severity. And I was on Gabura, which is the right shoulder. So what other message did I need? It came from spirit and it told me what to do. And the more you work with the worlds, the more you see that they really are distinct and yet unified in a flow. And that when we ask the right questions, we get very different answers.
So how often would you say somebody should have energy mapping done?
I think everyone should have it done once to understand the worlds and how they're designed and how they can best utilize their energy to optimize their potential. But then they never have to have another reading unless they want one. And usually when I do a reading, I do the astrology as well, because I'm a very advanced astrologer. And I usually progress the charts and look at what's going on in their lives and the timing of it right now. Sometimes, depending on the person's energy map, I print out all of the astrology for all the worlds because I want to see how those integrate astrologically as well as in the map. I think it's more important for people to recognize the worlds and to gain some skills in navigating the worlds. And my husband and I do a free webinar every Thursday at noon where we talk a lot about the four worlds. And it's free to anyone who wants to register and come to our Noble Energy Wellness webinars.
Right. I forgot about those webinars. I did come to one or two of those. That is on the energy wellness.
At nobleenergywellness.com. And it's Thursday at noon Eastern time for an hour. And they're all recorded. And we generally publish the recording and the transcript. And we've been publishing summaries. And we may stop doing the summaries because it's a little bit labor intensive.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we try to get it for the webinars are on Thursday, and we usually post it by Sunday or Monday.
Are there a lot of like common misconceptions or myths that you'd like to debunk about what you do?
I don't use a formula. Anybody who uses a formula, as they do in the human design system, where you're told you're a certain type and that's who you are, that's misinformation, and you should run the other way. You are not being empowered. Anyone who restricts speech or censors your questions or is not open-minded to what you bring is not somebody you should follow. Work in coaching, work in doing a reading, whether it's a psychic reading or a energy map reading or a psychological session. No one has the right to disempower you, to question your integrity as you know yourself to be. And who you are and what you want to achieve in your life is worth you doing it. And nobody should tell you otherwise. And transparency, has the person you're taking advice from, have they been successful? Are they in a good relationship? Have their children done well? You know, who's your role model? And if somebody is not living the life they're telling you you can live, then don't follow them.
You know, I love that you bring that up because not even just these lines of businesses, but there are a lot of things out there in spiritual communities, in like social media communities. I mean, everywhere where there are people that will try to control, they will try to fraudulently collect money or impersonate, or there are people that will try to have a power over type relationship. I mean, there's just so much out there that I'm really glad that you brought that up, because in my past, even looking for the spirituality things, you know, back in my 20s, and I ended up in, I guess you could say, cult type situations, because there's gatekeeping, there's so many things out there where they want the power over type of relationship. You kind of almost fall into a sort of a slavery. It's so I'm really glad that you brought that up, because
I like the people I work with to have freedom to speak freely. They actually, I started my practice in Chicago, and I had a very beautiful office on Michigan Avenue overlooking the lake, and I loved it. And then I came out to California in 1976, and it was home. So I closed up my office and took my kids and moved to California and started my practice over again. And I decided that I wanted to work at home. And I was doing groups every 6 weeks in my home. And I wanted my clients to see that I was living the way I told them they could live. That I wanted them to see my relationships with my children. I wanted them to see my relationship with my husband. I wanted them to see where I lived and how I lived, and that I wasn't telling them anything that I hadn't already been through. And that if I could do it, they could do it, because I wasn't any different or any better than them. And I still have clients, and I'm in touch with people who were some of my earliest clients. One of my earliest clients, who I saw at the office where I just was renting it by the hour. I didn't even have a real office. And I lost touch with him for a number of years. And then he called me one day and said he wanted to send me a copy of his book, because without my coaching, he never would have written it. And we became friends. And this is someone now I've known for more than 50 years. And it's so nice to see people excel and be empowered and live the life they love.
And then tell you that you helped them achieve that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, I think, Maya, that's the work where those of us who do it honestly are trying to do.
Right. Trying to be authentic and
authentic and be a role model and say you can do it if you believe in it and if you use these skills.
So how would somebody go about getting a energy mapping with you? Is there like an appointment calendar or a
If
phone
they go
number?
to nobleenergywellness.com, on the resources tab, they can come across my calendar and they can book a session with me.
It sounds like, and I love this, it sounds like you don't have a cookie cutter approach. Each individual you will delve in here or as needed for the person.
Right.
So is there a typical appointment length of time, or does that vary as well?
It varies. I can do a quick reading in 15 to 20 minutes, sort of an overview. There are half hours on my schedule and hour sessions. I love spending an hour so I can go into depth. But if somebody wants a half hour to just get a taste of what they're going to experience, I'll do that with them. Or if somebody just wants to talk to me, I'm open to that.
So if somebody really wanted the juicy stuff and they wanted you to spill the tea, you could say to expect it to be at least an hour, right?
They could get a lot in a half hour.
Okay.
They
All
get
right.
depth at an hour.
Gotcha.
They get tools in an hour.
Well, yeah, it's all going to be valuable. Yes. Yes. Okay.
And, anyone who's interested can always start out by coming to the free webinar.
Right.
And getting to know me and getting to know my husband and seeing who we are and who the people we work with are and how we work with them.
Right.
And I usually start the webinars with an attunement, and I usually end it with an attunement.
Oh, that's cool. What type of an attunement is it?
Usually I ask people to go find a comfortable place and go within, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, and releasing anything that is an energy that is foreign to you, something you picked up, something that you want to release. And I have everybody release whatever they want to release, and then center themselves in a clearing space where they can set an intent for what they want to have happen. And depending on the day, I change my words, I change my focus. I never plan it. It happens based on the energy of the group. And I usually end asking everyone to support each other in the webinar with love and support. And we usually finish at the end of the webinar with extending the peace and the love to their loved ones, the community, and the world.
I like that. So outside of like all of your professional experiences, certifications, all of your research and all of these, for lack of a better way of putting it, tools that you also have publications also.
Yes, I do.
Would you like to talk about those?
Sure. I actually have some sitting right here on my desk. It just so
Awesome.
happens. So I can
Awesome.
show you.
Okay.
So the first one I published, which is out of print but still available, is Marriage in Trouble. And that one was about the difficulty making a decision about getting a divorce. And that was a very hard decision for me. And I was only 28 years old when I divorced my husband, and I had 2 young children. And it took me 2.5 years to make that decision. So I wrote a book because there was no help to help me make the decision. And that book was given to me in my first Kundalini experience. And then I wrote Astrology Essentials, which is a book that I wish I had when I was learning astrology. So I wrote the Astrology Essentials to show people how they could learn astrology in a way that made it make sense to me. And then Cosmic Secrets talks about the mapping. And then I just published a first-degree Reiki manual, which is on Amazon and should be in bookstores, but I don't have a copy of it. And then I did a second-degree Reiki workbook, which takes people through all the Reiki treatments they can do on themselves if they have second degree to clear past traumas. And I've just written a second-degree manual, which will come out probably in the next month or so. And I have a book coming out before Christmas called Cosmic Guidance, Mastering Your Life. And that is a journal book for every day of the year. And it's evergreen. And there is advice for each world, each day, and room to write about your observations in the 4 worlds.
I'm excited. I didn't even know that one was coming.
It's coming, and there's going to be some supporting materials, some meditations and tools that I refer to in some of the days. And Cindy is going to be posting those on a static web page, so they'll be available to whoever orders the book.
That is so awesome. So are all of these, minus the ones you're still working on, of course, are they all available on Amazon?
They are all available on Amazon and through Ingram, so they should be in libraries and bookstores and so forth.
Awesome.
And I think the Astrology Essentials and Cosmic Secrets may be available on Apple. I'm not certain. I had to take it off Apple to promote it on Amazon, and I'm not sure if it's back yet.
Oh, yeah, I've heard some authors say, that they have a hard time cross.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what I didn't know that I found out is that if you publish on Amazon, it's only distributed through Amazon.
I heard that too.
So that's why my new books are also on Ingram.
Nice. Yes. So before we wrap up, was there anything else that you wanted to touch on that we haven't touched on up to this point? Did I miss anything?
I think you've done a great job. Maya, and you're a great interviewer, and I love your questions, and I love working with you. So
Thank
you've done a great
you.
job. There's nothing I want to add.
Awesome. So let's recap where they can book appointments at, and find your publications and all of that on your,
If they go to www.nobleenergywellness.com, they can sign up for the free webinars. They can go under the resource tab and book an appointment with Dr. Eleanor. They can scroll through the website and find past webinars. Lots of materials to download.
It's all under resources.
They're all under.
Booking appointments under resources. Your books are under resources.
Everything's under resources, I hear.
Under resources.
Transcripts are under
Sign up
resources.
for the free webinars.
Sign up for the free webinars under resources. And then under resources, I think we also have some tools and some things I use that people may be interested in.
awesome. Well, this has been a pleasure, and now I'm excited about the other things that are coming out. And I got to get back on the webinars because I was on one or two of them and it slipped my mind.
Oh,
So,
and Maya, anytime you want me to do another podcast, feel free to
absolutely, like maybe around when the Christmas one comes out, maybe, or something.
Okay, sure. Maybe we
right.
can do a special something for that.
Yes, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. It has been such a pleasure, and I find what you do so interesting because there are so many places that don't combine the spiritual and the mundane, let alone the four worlds and the cosmic energies, and then also the scientific parts of everything. It's so rounded and complex, but you explain it so beautifully so that even someone that doesn't have your background can understand, and that's what I love so much.
That means a lot to me, Maya.
Thank you. All right, well,
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you
joining
for
us.
taking the time to interview me.
Yes, have a great night.
You too. Bye.